Making sure that's not a time lapse, because that would not be very useful. I'm using 14mm rod to make it about the size of, about that big. And it's helpful to use a rod that's thick enough to be able to support your piece. If it's too thin, the connection between the implosion and the puntee will get loose and start to wobble, and that just makes your life a little harder. So you can use a thick rod, or you can get a section of thick rod and make a handle on it. What size tubing? I would use heavy wall. Depending on the size I want, you can use anywhere between like 16 to 25. If I want to go really big, you can use like up to 30. As long as it's heavy wall. Like, it's all about how big it blows up on wall. So you want to have a flat piece of graphite nearby. You don't want to have a piece of graphite that's like on a paddle with a handle where it doesn't lie flat. Because having a flatness is important for this. We're going to just build up our ball here. Air Marver it. I'm going to flatten it into a disc, so I'm going to heat a little bit more of the front. Go straight up and down onto my marver. Gently press down, turning, make it flat. There's a dead bug on your marver, make sure it's not clean. Alright, now I'm going to draw my design on. So I'm going to make a little flower. We'll start with making some stamens in the middle. Turning my flame down very small. I like to have a lot of control when I'm drawing with stringer. I make 5 little dots in the middle. Now let's do some color. So you always start from the middle and then work out. I made 5 lines. The number is up to you. Now I'm going to break my stringer. Very important step.
Don't you forget it.
Alright, and now I'm going to do a little bit more, another layer of lines right outside of that. Alright, so what's most important when placing your design is negative space. If you make your lines really thick or really close to one another, they're all going to compress and get a lot closer together and bigger when they're imploded. So negative space is just as important. I would say that's the most important element of this. Now we're going to begin the imploding process. So if you haven't melted in your color, if it's really on the surface, start by doing that. Angling it to melt it in a bit. And then at the same time, or soon after, we're going to start to heat the clear on the edge. Also, when we're placing the design, you may work from the middle out. And basically the palette that you're drawing your design on is this circle. So you don't really want to or need to go on like the edge of the circle. I kind of went right up to the edge, and I don't really need to go any further, because then it would be possible you wouldn't implode all of it, or it would be a little trickier. So I'm heating the edge of the disc, hanging it down in the flame using gravity. I imagine a tire rolling in the flame, and you're heating the tread of the tire right now. This also helps because if you are using a color that's prone to boiling, you're not putting as much heat directly on the color. And in this process, the disc will start to turn into a ball. It will thicken up, and the color gets sucked into the middle. You're gonna have this donut-looking divot, and that is what you want. This little donut thing in the middle.
I just wanted to be Homer Simpson in that moment and just be like, donut.
Then you're going to flatten it gently, and this pushes the color. It makes way to push the color up inside of the glass and flattens it. And by doing that, you're creating more room to make more lines around it. So this is the implosion process right here. I'm going to do that one more time. Float it a little more. And I'm not really heat's my main tool, and when I marver, I'm just flattening it. You don't want to, you don't need to marver the sides of your ball to get it in shape. That actually distorts your implosion and makes it a slower process. And then when I'm flattening it, I'm just gently flattening it, and it's turning. And now the flower is very much like more on the inside of that. All right, now we've got room to do another layer of petals if we want. I'll use this blue, and since we're working front to back here, working front to back, so the designs you make on the front obviously should be smaller than the back. They could be chunkier. So at this point, I'll just probably use the glass right off the rod. I'm going to use a blue that reduces and turns a little silvery. Alright, so I got some dots here. They're a little thicker. And now what I like to do, because I'm fancy, is I like to get my knife. I heat each one of these blobs, and then I go through it, and that makes it like a pointed leaf shape. It's up to you if you want to do that. I'm going to go heat each one. You can also layer on colors. If you have a transparent or a striking color, putting white on the back looks really nice.
I've never seen anyone do that.
Yeah, I really like the way it kind of shapes it, and if your blobs look a little funky, it actually makes it look really good. You can also do a couple lines with your knife to make it like a ruffled petal. Alright, we got that. Little goes a long way. So that will show up in the end. It's kind of nice. Alright, now let's implode that. You can do as many layers of an implosion as you want, or as few. You can also just put it all in one layer. Like when I do like sea anemones, I often just do it on one layer and just implode that right like that. But if you want like a multi-layered thing, you can go in as many layers as you want. Really, your limiting factor is the size and thickness of your starting disc, because it will only be as thick and as deep as that will let you get. And I'm, you know, being aware of where the heat is hitting so that it's not heating the connection point to the rod, so that it doesn't move. And now, I don't know if you guys can see, but the flower is very much inside, starting to be inside the drawing. And then we flatten it one more time. I just make sure that all of the leaves are inside. Let's implode it a little bit more. So like, if you can kind of leave it so some of it's on the outside, or you can push it all the way in. The main thing people do when they mess up is they forget to turn when they're flattening it on the marver, and then it flattens weird. And if that happens, it's okay. You can just, you know, even it out. It's not the end of the world. But always be turning, and basically when I'm squishing, I'm using the weight of the glass on the rod. I'm not like forcing it. You should never feel like you're forcing it. Alright, so here we have our little flower inside. We do, oh man, I'm so tempted to just do one more little layer of leaves. Do a contrasting color. I'll make it quick. Any questions about this so far?
Do you like to hold it on center, or like elbow up or down? How do you find it implodes best?
Elbow up, holding the glass down
Okay.
when I'm imploding, yeah. Elbow up is holding the glass down. Elbow down is holding the glass up. Terminology can be like a little confusing, but this is a good way to think about it. Okay, there we go. Can you see it on the screen now? Up there? Maybe a little bit. All right, let's implode this baddie. And then we'll put a backing on. I always like to put a backing on for a pendant. I feel like it seals the secrets inside. No one knows if it's a real flower or not. How'd you get that flower in there? People always ask. Which is a compliment. So yep, and hanging the glass down in the flame. I'll flatten it a little bit to push the color up. So I can see all of the things.
So if you wanted to make it a marble,
Yeah.
would you just stop flattening it
Yeah.
eventually?
That's one way for sure. Yeah, I would just round it with gravity into a ball, or you could kind of keep it flat and you can get a ball and smush it on. You get a second implosion and make a two-faced marble. There's our flower inside. Now let's do the backing. For the backing, you can use solid rod or you can use frit. When I'm doing production style, because I make a lot of these, I have a little dish of black fine frit, and I just dip it in there like 5-6 times. You can also use rod. So I like to use a backing that's complementary to the colors inside. So if it's going to be a light color, black generally looks very good. Unless there's black in the implosion itself, then you might want to use like a blue, or you could use a lighter color. Whatever, as long as it's opaque. I'm gonna build up a ball. Now, like, this is colors imploded in here. So we want to keep it either hot or warm and not cool down. So if I'm gonna go get some coffee, I don't do it now. Often there will be sometimes a little dimple or the donut in the very back of your implosion. That's fine. If you don't like it, you can fill it with your backing, or you can get a little clearer. It's just from the implosion process, or you can flatten it all the way, but it's not like a problem. Push this on. Melt it in. Glad I have my blast shield today. I broke 2 blast shields in the past 2 weeks. Very sad. There's special glass that has like a UV coating, protection coating, and like, no.
I get very frustrated when I break tools.
I'm like, no.
Glass is okay.
Alright, I don't mind breaking my glass. It's like, I had to pay for this. Like, you know, a decent amount. I had like a special like 6-inch one. But I'm using like just a regular sheet of glass, which is at least helping me with the heat. And once you start working with one, you really notice it when you don't have one for anything big. But what happened to me is it was a little bit loose and it just fell out when I was walking. Alright, we melt in the blob. Flatten it. And at this point we want to gently flatten it because we don't want to over squish the design. So the backing is quite hot at this point, so I'm less worried about it. But if the whole thing was hot, you know, just keep that in mind. Maybe readjust your heat base so that the implosion doesn't over flatten. You don't lose your depth. Alright, now we get to punting it and review the design. Use an appropriately sized punty for the job. This is a 6mm punty, which is, well, this thickness probably around a good size. It's probably the smallest I'd use. I'd maybe do between 6 and 8mm and just marber the tip. Make sure it's on straight. If it's not on straight, just take it off and reapply it. Melt it off the rod. You're going to get a little crunchy kiss, which you can melt in or you can pull off with your tweezers. And now I'm angling in towards the base of the hemisphere. This flame and this angle allows me to heat the whole thing at once and get it into a smooth, even dome expeditiously. This is the part where people often get frustrated, like, oh, it'll never smooth out. So hot, concentrated flame, angle in. And now we will reveal the design. This is the exciting part. We get to kind of see what it finally looks like as it cools down. Hold your applause, but I appreciate it. No, you clapping. Oh, I love you guys. So, moment of truth here. And as this is happening, I've selected my next punty because we're going to punty on a 90 degree. Now there we go. And you'll get to choose. The color will start to reveal. And you decide, how do I want to orient it? What, if you want to make it a pendant, what orientation do I want it to be? So I decide that pretty as it's cooling down. Okay, I like that. We'll punty on a 90 degree. This helps put the loop on. If you don't do this punty, it makes it a lot more awkward. Let that punty set up, and now the trick is to remove it from the first punty and not the second punty. So I take my cold tweezers, I touch it on the connection of the first punty, chill it, tap it off, voila. Then I fire polish the punty mark. And then we'll put the bail on. So I'll show you guys another way of making bails, because you can draw them. Bail also means loop, in case it's not clear. You can hand pull them, or you can use a bail biter tool, which I like to do for my production pieces. So I like to get a nice piece of glue that kind of matches part of the design.
The little things, man.
The little things. It ties it all together. If it's a reducing color, sometimes I twist it around like this to give like striations. Put a nice little, slightly larger than a pea to have enough material. I hang it upside down so that I can center it while getting it a hot seal. The most important thing is having a nice strong loop. No one will buy it if it doesn't look like a strong loop. They'll be afraid it will break, even if you know it won't break. Then I get my tweezers and I make a little tab that way. Then I got my bail biters, and these are useful for creating a small starter hole in the glass. So, I heat either side. I go in, I bite it, and then I go like this. And it creates a teeny little hole, not big enough yet. Then I go and I do the other side, and I'm just heating the flat part. And this makes a small enough hole that you can remount. And I forgot my little... Can you hold this on the frame real quick?
What are you doing right now?
I'm working, keeping it warm. This is the time where you want to like get it. Great job. You want to get it, keep it warm. So if I had to go grab a tool, you flame in you a little bit. Thank you to my lovely assistant. Or you can garage it. But color, in case deep and clear like this, is stress time. So it is possible these break, and they break on me sometimes. So I just wanted to get like my tweezers that have a little point, or you can have like shears or something that just has like a kind of a tapered edge, a small taper. And I go in either side and I ream it. I'll do one side, then I'll do the other side, because it'll push the loop a little bit each time, so I go back and forth to keep it even. And then that's how you make it big. So the bail biters are awesome and useful for making a little hole, but they won't make a big hole. So you need something to open it a little further. And there we've got a nice sturdy loop. There's our, I'm gonna show it to the YouTube video. There's our implosion, and you can kind of see the depth from the side. I'll flame anneal it real quick, and then I'll show it to you. I'll pass it around to you guys. You can see it, but yeah, we got the white stamen, aqua azul, first layer petals, then some, maybe it's aqua chameleon, second, and aqua, peacock chameleon, and then aqua azul again. So there's our implosion. You guys can pass that around if you want pretty quickly. And then I'll put it in the kiln. And then since I'm going to pass it around and it'll be cold, it'll be getting a little colder, I will put it in the kiln on the rod, and then when it's soaked a little bit, I'll come out and fire polish it, just for safety. Yeah, so that's an implosion. Any questions about that? Yeah, alright, sweet. Thanks, guys.